Joining me now on the Blinder guest line is the co-founder and CEO of Blinder, Ross McConnell. Ross, how are you?
I'm really great. Thanks, Brian. Hanging in there. Correction, it's the Blinder video guest line today, maybe for the first time.
That's right. I'm loving the Blinder video. For those of us on podcast, we're also going to put this out on our Twitter handle so you can see how the video works. Really an amazing technology at a time, Ross, when people are having to work from home or they're having to create content remotely. Talk a little bit about your product, because I know you guys are seeing a big uptick right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been working, for several years on just trying to make the media interview just as easy as a phone call. And as you know, we started off with just a voice solution that allowed professional sports teams and music PRs to make their talent available for media interviews through their own mobile phones without sharing any personal contact details, and then to record those conversations so that they can be shared with their audiences. And just for the last 6 months, we've really doubled down on video and making the video interview just as easy as a phone call. And that's how we're doing things now. My tools of trade for producing Blinder video content are my iPhone that I'm talking to you through, my AirPods that I've got stuck in my ears, and I'm sitting in New Zealand talking to you in Portland, creating content. We're both working from home, and it's easy, and that's what we've really been working on, making possible for media professionals and sports PRs all around the world.
Yeah, I mean, with Blinder, whether you're a reporter, a podcast host like me, an athlete, a coach, with Blinder, you can be a one-person production unit. And it really is amazing. Like you said, you can have your iPhone, you can have your laptop, you can have your desktop, but it's great quality and you can get to it right away. Like I know there's a lot of breaking news in the world right now.
Yeah.
And if you need to break news quickly, or you're out on a remote, or you just need to do a podcast real quickly, this is a great tool.
Yeah, and Brian, you know a bit about our origins. My co-founder is a guy called Cayley Wilson, who was a sports PR. He was the communications manager for the New Zealand Rugby League. He was working here in New Zealand. He had athletes who were applying their trade all over the world. And so he was really dependent on phone interviews for getting his stories out into the media. And so he needed something that allowed him to connect the media with his talent while he was in a remote working situation. We really focused on making that situation really easy for Cayley initially, and then for other sports communications managers. And now, unprecedented times, and we find a whole lot of people around the world who are working in that exact situation, confined to home with their talent, with their news sources in other parts of the world. How do they make sure that the stories still get told? How do they still put the media in touch with their talent? Continue to engage their talent, keep their fans engaged, with what's going on with their teams. It's a real challenge for them. And so, we've had a huge amount of interest being shown because people are finding new ways of adapting to getting their jobs done. And fortunately, we're in a unique position to be able to help them through that change.
Well, so let's dig in on a case study. Yeah. You're working with the University of Illinois right now.
Yes.
And they have athletes who are probably quarantined or in their dorms or in their home. There's a lot of pro sports team across the world where the athletes are isolated, and whether they're playing video games or cooking or playing with their dog and cat or their kids, they're posting videos. Blinder is a great tool for everyone to use, but tell us how you're using the tool with the University of Illinois.
Yeah, so the challenge really comes down to the media still wants access to their student athletes and their coaches and that sort of thing, and they're not working together. Actually, I've got to roll it back about 18 months with the University of Illinois because they took a look at our solution back then when we were a voice solution. And, the value proposition was really about how do you make your student athletes available to the media through their own mobile phones without sacrificing their privacy. And what they decided at that time was, well, the way we get that done is that as the SID at a college athletics department, I start the call on my own mobile phone and hand it over to the student athlete. Right. That's the easiest way for me to do the job right now when I'm with the student athlete, right? They're not with the student athlete now. And post-coronavirus, sharing your mobile phone with someone isn't kind of kosher. And so, I think we're seeing changes in the industry that will, hopefully this all passes really shortly. But I think we're seeing changes being forced on the industry that will actually have a long-term benefit in terms of the way that we operate more efficiently. We're more agile around our content production. And so, and come back to your question, the University of Illinois is in confinement, like you were saying, and they're just using Blinder to make sure that they're still continuing to engage with their fans, continuing to engage with the media, and they're able to do that while they're working at home. And so we actually just did the onboarding with them a couple of days ago. We had 9 of their team come onto the Blinder platform all at once. I did about a 30-minute training session through a video conference and got them all up and running. And now they're away and laughing in terms of their ability to produce content that they want to.
So if you're a social media team for a team or a university, or you're a media outlet and you can't send a camera to interview the athlete or the coach because they're quarantined, Blinder sounds like the solution, because I'm looking at my screen right now. It's broadcast quality. You're on the other side of the world. It really is amazing technology.
Yeah, well, we've got connectivity working in our favor. Everyone's getting more connected in the world, and that connectivity is getting better. Mobile devices are getting that much better. I've just upgraded to an iPhone 11, so I'm probably looking hopefully a lot better than I used to with my 6 that I upgraded from. But yeah, one of the sayings that we've had at Blinder is, make news without the crews. You don't need to wait until you get a camera crew out to a breaking news story before you can actually, produce content on it. Everyone's got a microphone and a camera on a device in their pocket these days. What we've focused on doing for media teams is making it as easy as possible for them to connect with a remote news source through any device, be it a mobile phone or a laptop, and to have a conversation like this that they can share with their audience. Yeah, and we've focused on making that just as easy as a phone call for whether you're a journalist or a sports PR manager who needs to set up a media interview with a member of your team. That's just as easy as that.
So if I'm a media outlet, or I'm a university, or I'm a pro sports team, and I'm listening to this right now or watching this right now, what's the best way for them to onboard with Blinder?
Yeah, so we've got a special offer. We're calling it our Remote Life Starter Kit, Brian. And people can go to our website, blinderhq.com. They'll see the details of our Remote Life Starter Kit there. What we're offering to help out, media teams all over the world who find themselves in this new working environment. We're making it really easy for them to get started on Blinder. So for media teams of up to 10 people, we'll give them a Blinder account through until the 30th of June for $999 US. That's a discount of up to 70% of what our retail pricing is. So we just want to make it really easy for them to make the decision. And then if they express their interest through the website that way, then we'll get right onto them, and we'll provide them with an onboarding session and a live training, so that they're up and running just as quickly as they can be, and they can adapt to their new working situation and continue to get their news stories out. Tell better stories with video, and keep sharing it with their audience,
Now, I'm assuming this is all, it can be edited, right? So if you're a social media person or a media person and you need to edit any of the video, you can do that, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I rely on the editing a lot on these things, Brian.
As I always say, I have the face for radio. So,
We're all getting that way, I'm afraid. But so look, what happens when you do an interview through Blinder, if the news source that you're connecting with, they don't need any special software. They get sent an email and a text message with a link in it that allows them to open something just like a FaceTime, but in their browser. Blinder is then recording that conversation in your cloud-based account, so that as soon as the call is finished, you can get in there, you can download either an MP3 file from an audio interview, or an MP4 file for the situation that we're in. And for media teams for larger media teams where there might be a journalist and a producer, and a video editor working in separate locations, they can all access the same cloud account for the team. As soon as the journalist is finished doing the interview, the video editor can get in there, download the recordings, and get busy with editing the footage to make it look like they want it to, so that they can produce really nice quality articles that they want to share with their audience.
So you mentioned earlier, and I agree with you, this is going to change a lot of things with how we do things. Whether, right before the league stopped playing in the United States, they had changed the media access policy. No more media in the locker rooms. I've been saying the media still deserves the access, but does it really need to be in the locker room? And, your tool, again, is a tool that can help people. But I wonder, in your opinion, what else do you think is going to change coming out of this, in addition to people using products like Blinder to self-publish more?
Well, yeah, the example that you just provided, Brian, is I know we've talked about that before, and people have certain ways of operating that they might have been using for 25, 30 years or more. I'm just in the habit of making my athletes available for media interviews after training while I'm with them, and doing it on my own mobile phone. And we've actually seen situations where a PR manager will have 3, 4, 5 athletes stacked up for an interview after training, and be doing them sequentially. So, you've got professional athletes whose time is highly valuable hanging around for longer than they needed to after training. So that's great for the PR manager, but it's not so great for the athletes. But a lot of the young athletes just think, oh, well, this is the way that it's done. There's no other way of doing things. And so I have to grin and bear it. And so when new technologies come along, people always need some sort of external motivation to want to change the way of doing things. And that can be either being inspired by something else you see someone else doing, or it can be pain related. And I think we're all in a lot of pain at the moment, with the situation that we find ourselves in. And so that's providing the motivation for people to change old ways of doing things. And I think what we're going to find is that there are new, better ways of doing things that we just haven't adopted, because old habits are hard to break. So the example that you provided is one of them. I think, the idea of large media outlets having to scramble a camera crew out so that they can capture high quality video footage just the way that they want it. I think in a lot of cases they're missing the breaking news story by being too slow to respond, right? And so that there are far more agile methods of creating content now in the way that you and I are doing, that the larger media outlets can learn from. Another example that I've seen a lot of recently is, when you're talking to media outlets, asking them questions, how do you currently do media interviews? And they'll say, oh, well, we use Skype. And I say, well, do you do that from your laptop at home? And they say, oh, no, there's a Skype set up in the office. And so when I want to interview the guest, sometimes a guest on the other side of the world, I've got to come into the office to use the Skype terminal that my organization provides for me. So that means that they haven't got the flexibility of being able to do the interview at the optimal time for the guest. It's hugely inefficient for the journalists themselves. And so having more cloud-based infrastructure rather than fixed in place on-premise infrastructure that they have been using for generating this content is a big part of the change that I'm going to see. And obviously with everyone working from home and needing to remain productive and to get the stories told, that way, cloud-based infrastructure is obviously a great way for teams to stay productive and to continue to collaborate with each other. And so those are some of the changes that I think we'll see now through these next few months that will endure, and we'll see new, more efficient, more agile methods of generating content for our fans and our audiences.
Before I let you go, our audience always likes to know the founder story. And I know I already know the founder story, but for the people listening right now, tell the founder story of Blinder.
Well, I already told you a bit about that sort of earlier in the interview with my co-founder, Kaylee. Right. Blinder was, we were inspired by a professional conversation starter, is what I like to say. Kaylee will go up and talk to anyone in the world that he meets, and has a great knack for extracting a story out of them. It's really truly a magic power. But he came up with this idea that he needed a better way of making his professional athletes in the New Zealand Rugby League team available to the media without doing it on his own mobile phone. And we're old high school buddies. Kaylee likes to say that the first time we ever met was on the starting blocks of a junior swimming race, and the second time we ever met was when I finished. So we go back a long way. But I've got an MBA from the University of California, Berkeley, and had done a number of things in the entrepreneurial world. And so when Kaylee had this idea, he came and talked to me about it and said, "Hey, don't you think something like this should exist?" And I thought, absolutely. The ability to receive a call on your own mobile phone without sharing your number with the caller. I'm not a professional athlete, but that sounds like something that I could use and anyone in the world could use. And so, a few years ago, we got busy with making the technology, creating it from scratch, and initially focused on selling it to high-profile teams in sports. And so we started with the likes of Emirates Team New Zealand, who are the America's Cup champions. The AFL, the Australian Football League in Australia, was one of the first customers on board. And then pretty soon after that, we got a lot of interest out of the music PR world as well. So we like to say that Blinder has been used around the world by Olympic champions to Grammy winners, and from the AFL through to the Premier League of English football, and throughout the NCAA as well. And just in the last few months, we've really turned our focus to this video solution. And seen an incredible amount of interest from the media outlets as well. So we've kind of moved from one side of the media market, which is the talent managers in sports and entertainment, and now we've got a platform that's really valuable to the media organizations around the world as well. And we always believed that we were working in a two-sided market, and that we had a platform that could create, could be the foundation for greater collaboration between, the talent managers and the media who want access to the talent. And it looks like in the situation that we're in now, we created it just in time, and that collaboration is being able to continue to happen while everyone's being, put into isolation, so to speak. So that's our story, Brian.
The talent has become their own media, right? If you're isolated,
exactly,
you've got to become your own media, and you're covering your own story. So I love your video component. I've known you guys for a few years now, and it started with the audio, like you said, but the video is a game changer for you guys, I think, and especially in the situation we're in right now. So best of luck to you.
Thanks.
Ross McConnell, the co-founder and CEO of Blinder. You can go to blinderhq.com or at blinderhq on Twitter. Hey, these are uncharted times right now. So first and foremost, I hope you guys stay safe. But in opportunities like this, businesses can really help people and help with the technologies that are available. And I think Blinder has a terrific technology that can help a lot of people. Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. Hey, let me switch the interview around on you a little bit. But I'm stuck in New Zealand because flying has been discouraged. We spend a lot of time out around the world. I think I've spent half of my life over the last 2 years in the US. What are you seeing over there? How are you being impacted? How are the people that you're talking to being impacted? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is travel is pretty much shut down. So me getting on planes to go meet with clients in person or talk to them about strategies or how the athletes deal with the media and social media, that's all virtual now. So tools like this are very important. Yeah. Everyone's working from home. There's my podcast studio has moved to home. So Griggs is in his home studio. I'm in my home studio. Usually we're together. So that's a little bit interesting. I was telling you before the video started, I'm used to just sitting down and, I do my prep for all the interviews and I sit down, and Griggs worries about all the tech. Well, now I've got to be a tech guy too. And if you know me well, that's not quite my strong suit. So, hey, the best plug that Blinder needs is that I was able to connect for this video call right here, and that we've pulled it off. That's how easy it is. Because if I can figure it out, anyone can figure it out.
Well,
but, on a serious note, my daughter's out of school for the next month and a half. Schools are shut down. It's a weird time. It's in my lifetime, we've never seen anything like this, but it's scary for a lot of people. As a parent, I'm trying to, keep my daughter and my sisters and my mom and my family calm, but there's a lot of unknown. And I think there's a lot of anxiety with unknown, but you just got to keep plugging away. And, for people like us, we're trying to provide information. In some cases, we're trying to provide an escape. Maybe you can think about sports for a few minutes and where Tom Brady signed, or you can laugh a little bit with the person that you're talking to. But, it's serious stuff. So, but everything has changed. I'm sure we're probably a little bit behind where you are with where things are. But, they've taken this very seriously. This is what I tell people, Ross, is for anyone who doubts what's going on right now, Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, these league commissioners, it's going to cost them billions of dollars. They wouldn't shut down their leagues if they didn't think this was serious. So when you see people shutting schools down and sports leagues and restaurants and things like that, this is to be taken serious. There's still a lot of people here that aren't taking it seriously. And they're going to the beaches, they're trying to go to restaurants in some states. And it needs to be taken seriously, in my opinion.
Mate, last week was one of the most surreal weeks. I think probably the most surreal week that I've had in my short life. I probably started the week a little bit cavalier in my attitude towards it, and that, I'm not particularly worried and wasn't particularly worried about, the health effects on myself. But then paying attention to the wires and reading a lot of social media on it, it became obvious that a lot of people are extremely worried about this. And by the end of the week, my attitude had changed, that it's actually not really about how I feel about it. Sort of, we're all in this together. And I can't continue carrying on as if everything's going to be okay if the people around me are worried and anxious about things. So I had quite an attitude shift in things last week, and that's only continued to carry on. Part of the impact here is that New Zealand has enforced self-isolation on anyone arriving in New Zealand for 14 days. They've now closed the borders to anyone who's not a New Zealand citizen or resident. My co-founder, Kaylee, part of our story is that he's on his way back. He's based in the UK now. He's on his way back home. He's been forced into self-isolation in Australia, where he had a stopover. And when he arrives here today, he's going to have another 14 days of self-isolation. I've got another colleague working from home who's just returned from Ireland, another colleague who had 2 weeks of enforced isolation after returning from the Philippines. And in some respects, we've never been more physically disconnected, but it has the whole sort of experience has brought us closer together as a team than I feel like we've ever been. And, hopefully that's part of the silver lining to this cloud that is coronavirus, that we get that we all feel closer to each other in the end because we've come through this together.
Right. No, I completely agree with you. I'm thankful for technologies like Blinder that still allow us, even though, there's a great distance between us, you still can have a conversation like this. Obviously being connected with your family and friends and business colleagues is very important. So I agree with you. I think, for those of us who come through this okay, I think it is going to make us closer. It's a big deal. And, for someone like my daughter, who's 15 years old, she'll remember this year her entire life. I mean, when she's much older, you'll remember that 1 year where things were really weird and we had to isolate and we had to take great precautions. And,
Yeah.
You know, I'll remember it too. I'm probably older than you, but yeah, I'll definitely, I'll remember it too.
Yeah. That's right. One more question for you. So now that you know that you've got the ability to have a video interview with anyone in the world, wherever they may be, who would you most like to speak to?
Oh my gosh, this is going to surprise you. Because a lot of people are going to go, oh, he'd want to interview like an athlete or an owner or someone like that.
I like the surprising answers, Brian.
Yeah. Do you know who Larry David is? Larry David is one of the co-founders of the show Seinfeld.
Right.
And he has a show on HBO called Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yep.
And it's one of my favorite shows. So if I could have a Blinder conversation with anyone in the world, it would be Larry David, who's very cynical. And if you watch his show, he makes people laugh. It kind of deals with everyday things like Seinfeld, except it's on HBO, so they can be a little bit more risque with some of the topics that they discuss. Yeah. But Larry David would be my person.
All right. Well, I've just had a Blinder with Brian Berger from Sports Business Radio, and Larry David, if you're listening, Brian Berger would like to have a Blinder with you. So we're coming to get you. And
who's listening, I'm always surprised at who's listening. If Larry David is listening, yes, you have an open invitation to have a Blinder, video and audio with me.
Yeah, well, Ross, simulcast on Blinder TV and Sports Business Radio podcast. How about that?
Yes. Well, thanks for your partnership. Be safe, and
you too, Brian.
Joining us on Sports Business Radio. You're
My
listening
pleasure.
to Sports Business Radio. We'll be right back.
So, Brian, what changes have you seen in terms of the way athletes are going about staying engaged with social media and staying engaged with their fans? Because, you know, I've been talking about how their PR managers at their sports teams help them do that sort of thing. But of course, most of these athletes have the ability just to share content with their fans directly. So, seen any changes there?
I'm seeing lots of changes. I see the athletes are home and they're isolated. So the PR person, the social media manager, they're not available to either come capture video or for the PR person to set up the conversation in the first place. Yeah. So more and more the athletes are on their own. I mean, and I'm seeing people, whether it's cooking or playing with their kids or doing workouts in their house. I mean, it's crazy the amount of content that is coming out right now from athletes who are probably bored out of their mind or are doing certain things. You can only play so many video games, right?
TikTok content by professional athletes must just be going like that, right?
Yeah, it is. It's really spiking. So, you know, I think your tool is a great opportunity for them while they're isolated to self-publish and to send content to the leagues, the teams, the brands they're working with. I've seen the NBA has been putting out a video every day of a player who is at home, and they're basically telling people, wash your hands, make sure you're isolating, you know, giving them all of the tips they need. And I think the NBA has done a really good job with that. But I'm also seeing other teams who obviously got the video clip sent to them by the player.
Right. Yeah.
And now they're posting it on the league or the team social media channels. So it's really interesting because the athletes are on their own here, but I think they're savvy enough after all these years to know, here's who I need to get my content to. And again, a tool like Blinder is a great tool for them to be able to capture the content.
Yeah. Well, and on the other side, you know, we were talking before, how do the journalists and media themselves stay relevant in that environment where they haven't got access to the talent, or it's more difficult to get? The talent is getting better and better at producing their own content. How do the journalists get access to the talent for those longer form, you know, deeper insight stories that they want to tell? And I think that's where you know, Blinder fits nicely into the equation. And, you know, I think media outlets like The Athletic and the Players Tribune have been responding to that challenge really well. But, you know, how do they continue to tell those stories without actually getting a camera crew out to the athlete and setting things up the way that they would normally want to? And so that's, again, part of that adaptation that I think the media industry is going to have to go through. You know, what's the best type of stories that we can tell if what we're limited to is getting access to the talent through their mobile phones like this. You can still produce really good stuff. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming through the wires as well. Yeah, no, this is amazing. We're on the other side of the world from each other. The video looks crystal clear. The audio sounds great. So, if you're looking sharp too, Brian, I've got to say, I've got to get one of those hats. I said, you're looking sharp as well. I've got to get one of those hats. You've got to really count on, if you're a journalist, I don't have a PR person that I can go through now or a social media person. So I've got to work directly with the person I'm interviewing. Right. And that's why technologies like Blinder Video are very helpful. Blinder Audio is very helpful for my podcast. So, you're on to something here. And I think, again, during these times, a tool like Blinder is very, very valuable. We'd love to help media professionals all around the world out there. If they go to blinderhq.com, check out that remote life starter kit special offer we've got out there. We'd love to hear from them. We'd love to find a way to help. We're all in this together, and thanks to you, Brian, for your support for our business as well. Thanks, Ross. Good luck and stay safe. You too, mate. Cheers.